Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a list of some anticipated releases for 2021. This particular video is specifically some young adult fantasy books that I'm excited about. I do have one for adult fantasy, so I'll have that linked, but this one we're just sticking with the young adult books. So many of the YA books that I'm excited about are continuations to series, sequels, or completions of series. I'm so excited. I'm going to start with the one I am the most excited about because you guys heard me talk about it so many times this year. I'm sure you're tired of it and you're like, we get it, but Flamefall by Rosaria Munda, the first one, Fireborn, was so good. I still think about that stupid book all the time. It's just so heartbreaking, and it does such a good job of showing the difficulties and the struggles of rebellion, of different forms of government. You can just feel in the small details the author puts in that she definitely knows her stuff. I remember when I finished reading it and I was like, wow, that was so good. And then I read the author bio. It said that they studied political theory at Princeton. So there's a reason that it's just the politics and everything are executed so brilliantly, and it's heartbreaking. It's so good, and I cannot wait for Flamefall. Plus, there's dragons, there's dragons on top of it being a great political fantasy. It is fantastic. Speaking of dragons, another book that I'm so excited for would be the sequel to House of Dragons by Jessica Cluess. If you are unfamiliar with this first one, it is kind of a story about these 5 different characters. So you have 5 different point of views, which is pretty rare for young adult fantasy. But I thought all the characters' point of views were very distinct, so it was easy to keep track of who was who. And it's kind of a competition story, but it's very cutthroat. And I was thinking it would be like a fun, action-packed competition. And it is, but it's also, it dives into some serious stuff. You dive into the trauma of some of the characters, and you get into privilege and the different places that people are in as far as their status in society and how that affects their lives, and how other people, what they do and don't do to help change it, the choices that people make, the fact that some people have no choices. I was shocked. I was not expecting some really deep stuff from the story that I thought was going to be slash and fly dragons kind of a story. And the dragons? So in Fireborn, the dragons are there, but they're not almost characters in their own sense. In House of Dragons, the dragons are basically characters, because the characters have relationships with their dragons, and there's different culture from different places about how to treat your dragon. I was about to say how to train your dragon, but kind of sort of. I loved it, and I cannot wait after the end of the first one to see what happens in the second. Next up, we have a Vow So Bold and Deadly. I was really excited when I started A Curse So Dark and Lonely last year because I'd heard so many fantastic things. It sounded like such a great, fun book to pick up. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but with a really kick-butt main character who's feisty, and she is so lovable, so easy to root for. I really liked this twist on Beauty and the Beast. I really liked our main character, Harper. But I will say the sequel focused in on some different characters, which was fine. I ended up enjoying it by the end, especially the very end. The very end is such a cliffhanger, and I can't wait for that third book. On the topic of third books, we also have Wings of Shadow by Nikki Palpretto coming out. This is the third and final book in the Crown of Feathers trilogy. I have been loving this trilogy. It's very heavy in its lore and its history. So if you are somebody who likes adult fantasy and young adult, but maybe you kind of wish there was more of the world building that you get in adult in young adult, I think that was probably confusing. Basically, there's a lot of world building, especially with the history and the lore elements in this series, and there's some pretty fun twists at the end of the first one. The second one has a fantastic villainous character, very, very morally gray / maybe just bad, but also their relationship with one of the main characters is really interesting and fascinating to watch. Plus, I love the phoenixes. They're so precious. I want a phoenix. I want to be a phoenix rider. So I can't wait for the third one. And also, how cool is that cover? All of the covers have been good, but this third one is awesome. Next up, we have 6 Crimson Cranes. I'm so excited for this one. So I read the Spin the Dawn and the Unravel the Dusk duology. It's called The Blood of Stars earlier this last year. And the book, I believe, was marketed as like a Mulan and Project Runway story. And the Mulan aspect has to do with the fact that our main character disguises herself as a boy to go in place of her father to compete in, this is where the Project Runway part comes in, to become the Emperor's tailor. And the craft part of the story and the character's love of this particular thing really shines through in the story. It's definitely got a connection to the character's mother who passed away. You see how war has affected her family. You see her constantly wanting to sacrifice whatever she has to for the good of her family. But it's also a traveling love story, which I think kind of turned a lot of people away because that wasn't as clear in the marketing. But I actually kind of thought that the love story element ended up making this whole thing feel very fairy tale-esque, very whimsical, and I ended up enjoying the duology as a whole. And Six Crimson Cranes is a kind of story within the story that gets told to our main character at one point, or they're discussing it with someone, and this new book is that story. And I'm really excited because I liked that duology quite a bit, and I'm really excited to see how this comes into play. And also there's some hints that maybe kind of sort of one of the characters from the original duology who had lived a very long time had actually met this character, so I'm kind of like, are we gonna get an Easter egg of that character popping up? Anyway, I'm just really, really excited. This next one, I don't think there are a ton of concrete details for quite yet, and that would be the third book in the Skyward series by Brandon Sanderson. Knowing him, he'll have it out in like 3 months or something. But he always does his end of the year newsletter, and he'll probably have more details about it there. But I think that this is one of his focuses after finishing Rhythm of War and having it come out. I'm really excited. I loved the first Skyward book. It's a character who's very feisty, really intense, but it's kind of them projecting because they have to face so much adversity. They live on this planet that's constantly attacked by aliens, and she really wants to become a pilot, but she has so much working against her because her father was a pilot who famously abandoned. So she's very determined, but also so many people kind of look down at her because of what her father did. But either way, that first book, so much friendship, camaraderie. The scenes with them fighting in the air are fantastic. The second one for me had a shift in its focus a little bit, which was really favorable for a lot of fans, and I kind of missed some elements of the first. But I'm hoping this next one kind of ties the two things that are prominent in the first two in that third one. I believe it's going to be a quartet total. So I have a feeling that this third one's going to be really intense. Next up, we have The Gilded Ones, and this was an anticipated release of mine from last year, but I believe that it got pushed back for whatever reason. I'm not really sure, but obviously there's a lot that happened in 2020, so doesn't really matter to me. I'm just excited that it's coming out. We follow a girl who ends up joining this all-female group of the army. It has to do with her blood. Something is different about her blood, and it's African inspired. I'm so excited because I've been waiting for this book. I've been so excited for this book, and I'm just pumped that it's finally gonna get to come out. Last on the list would be Half Sick of Shadows, and this book is written by Laura Sebastian, who wrote the Ash Princess trilogy. I was very impressed by the conclusion of that trilogy because the first two were really fun, really addictive. I don't really like the term guilty pleasure, but that kind of feel you get when you know what that means, more than likely, that feeling you get towards something that's labeled guilty pleasure. That's kind of sort of how I felt about the first two. I devoured them, and then the third one, I was really surprised how much it emotionally hit me. I thought it was so well done. I thought the villain, I don't want to say too much, but I just thought that the relationship with the hero and the villain was really well executed in that third one. Just so many things that I really, really liked. So that author is coming out with a new series. I believe it is a King Arthur retelling, but with a lady at the center. I know that's not the most original thing. I know we've been seeing other stories with that, but either way, I love this author's other series so much that I'm now pumped for whatever else she comes out with. I am sure that I'm forgetting about some of my anticipated releases, so definitely feel free to leave some of yours in the comments down below. If I remember any, I'll try to have them linked as well. I'll have all of the pre-order links for these in the description bar, and then I'll also have links for the first books in the ones that are series in case you're interested in checking them out. Any reviews, I'll have those linked as well. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.